All right, so today we're going to cover 4 topics in off-campus housing. First, we're going to talk about how you can find off-campus housing and roommates. Then we're going to talk about things you need to do before you decide where to live and sign a lease. Then, third, we will talk about what to do after you sign a lease with a landlord in the area. And finally, we'll go over some common questions about renting and prices in the area. So to start your search for off-campus housing, you can visit the George Mason Off-Campus Housing website. The website is och.gmu.edu. You can register as a student, and that will allow you to browse tons of different rental listings in the George Mason surrounding area. So if you're interested in off-campus, even if you're not sure if you want to go off-campus, this is a great place to start. You can search by the price range that you're interested in, the neighborhood area, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and get a good idea of the types of properties that are available to you off-campus. You can also look for roommates on the website if you're not sure who you want to live with yet. You can post sublets and you can compare the favorite properties that you find on the website. So definitely check out the website as a first start to finding a place to live off-campus. When you start looking off campus, you should also consider your budget and the priorities you have in finding a place to live. Your monthly budget living off campus will include not only the rent that you pay to your landlord every month, but also the cost of utilities. So most of the time, water, electric, gas, heat, internet, those costs will be separate from the monthly rent. So you want to think about how much you can afford in total with the rent and utilities. You also want to factor in transportation and parking, especially if you are planning to live in driving distance to campus and you won't be walking. And then other things like food and other regular expenses that you might have. When you're looking at housing, you shouldn't bank on finding the perfect place, but instead think about your priorities and which things are most important. Rank things like your budget and the cost, the location where you want to live, the length of the lease, how important the quality of the house or apartment is, whether or not you want to have your own bedroom, have roommates, and the types of amenities that the apartment community or residential area might offer you. And you shouldn't bank on being able to find your perfect unit, but have an idea of the top couple that you want to look for and start by searching for those things, and then narrow your results down from there, as opposed to starting out a search on the website or elsewhere thinking that you'll find the exact perfect place. You also want to consider finding the right roommates because you will be spending a year living with these people. Make sure you ask important questions about their lifestyle and social habits before you decide to live with them. You want to talk about things like your sleeping habits, your study habits, what your expectations are for having guests and hosting people at the house, whether or not you like noise or no noise in the house, and what you expect to do about cleaning. All of these things are really important to talk about before you live with someone, and they may not be the type of things that you talk about regularly with your friends. So they're difficult things to bring up, but they're really important to discuss before you decide you want to live with someone. Your best friend on campus might not have similar sleeping and cleaning habits to you, and that might present challenges if you don't talk about those things and establish expectations before you live together. So you want to consider your budget and priorities and talk about those with the roommates that you think you would like to live with. A couple other tips. Groups of 2 or 4 tend to work out better than groups of 3, so think about that when you're looking for roommates next year. And if you haven't found someone on campus or through an activity that you want to live with, the roommate finder on the off-campus housing website is a great option to connect with other students that are looking for someone to live with. All right, so once you have started the off-campus housing search and have begun to narrow down and talk to some landlords that you might want to live with, you want to make sure you ask the right questions before you decide on a place. Definitely go visit all the units that you're thinking about living in, and make sure you visit more than one so that you have something to compare. Up here is a list of really important questions that you want to ask every landlord. Some of the highlighted ones, you want to ask if the utilities, the internet, and cable are included in rent, and if not, what is the estimated monthly cost. You want to ask about parking spaces because you might have to pay extra to park in that unit or community. You want to ask about maintenance issues and what happens if the toilet's leaking or something goes wrong in the apartment that you are not capable of fixing. Also ask about the security deposit, which is a set amount of money, usually equivalent to 1 month's rent, that you will have to give your landlord up front when you move into the unit. Your landlord will hold on to that money for the duration of your lease, and as long as you don't damage the place and you take good care of it, you will get that money back. But you should ask how much it is. Some landlords charge different rates for security deposits. Also ask about things like laundry, security in the area, what the process is for subletting if you think you might be leaving for a semester or a summer, and ask about bus stops and transportation. Make sure you're thinking about how you would get to class from the unit you plan to rent. You also, when you start getting to the lease signing phase, make sure you read and understand everything. There's a lot of jargon and a lot of uncommon terms in leases that none of us really understand. Don't be afraid to ask questions until you understand everything that you are signing to. You can also find a lot of the different common rental terms online, so take the time to ask your landlord and research online what you're agreeing to, and that you understand what your landlord expects of you in order to get your security deposit back and as far as taking care of the place. When you're looking for roommates and rentals, this is very uncommon, but occasionally there are scams out there, and the general rule is if your gut tells you that it's too good to be true, then it probably is. You want to be wary of anyone who wants to rent you a place before you've seen it, or anyone who wants to be a roommate with you before they've seen the place. That's the most common type of scam that we see through internet rental searches. So after you sign a lease, we talked about security deposits. You're going to give your landlord a security deposit, and you're going to do a walkthrough inspection. Definitely make sure you go through and do a full inspection of the unit you're living in before, or make sure you schedule that within 5 days after you move in. Don't let that slip through the cracks. It's really important. When you do this walkthrough with your landlord, you want to take paper notes and you want to take pictures of all the damages that are already in the apartment pre-existing before you moved in. That way at the end of your lease term, you can schedule another walkthrough and go over all the new damages if there are any, and that will affect how much of your security deposit your landlord keeps at the end of your lease. Ask your landlord, what does it take to get my security deposit back? Make note of that so that you know what you need to do and what's expected of you to get your security deposit back at the end of your term. You can also make notes of the walkthrough and what the notes you took about getting the security deposit back. Send your landlord an email and say, thanks for meeting with me. Here's what I understand from our meeting today. Is there anything else I should add or anything I forgot? Excited to live here, and look forward to living in this place. That's a good way to establish some goodwill with your landlord, and then you have an email record of what the expectations you and your landlord discussed are. And at the end of your lease term, it will be much easier to justify why you deserve to get your security deposit back if you haven't broken any of those expectations. Once you move in, you also want to take safety precautions. Simple things like staying in a group when you're leaving and coming to and from the property at night, not leaving valuables in your car, make sure your windows are secured and locked, agree on what you're going to do about locking doors with your roommates. Deadbolt the locks on your doors, make sure your entrances are kept well lit, that your smoke detectors are working, and know your fire escape routes. So some common rental questions. Everyone wants to know what the rent is in the area. This is a breakdown based on the data we have on the off-campus website of average prices for efficiencies and 1, 2, 3, and 4 plus bedroom units. Here you can see the average cost of utilities. So in addition to those monthly rent amounts, this is how much you should be expecting to pay per month to set up your utilities as well.